So I'll introduce you in English as well, although your French is perfect, we know it. Laurens Bekemans is an architect and co-founder of Brussels-based BC Architects and Studies, an architectural practice and non-profit research entity and material laboratory, and most recently BC Material, which is an urban mining company that repurposes construction site waste. Some people this morning were able to discover briefly the extent of what you do, as you guys have all these incredible practice of renovation. We owe you a lot with this building, and we will soon discover what you have done with the Clinique Jean-Paoli. So please welcome with me Laurens Bekemans.
Me again. Well, I have the extremely difficult exercise to step in the shoes, or at least take over the talk of Frank Gehry, which, of course, as much as you are, I'm very sad that he wasn't able to come. But I hope I can inspire you as well a little bit. Before I enter, and thank you so much, Gregory, you put even more pressure, as if I didn't have the pressure of Frank Gehry already. Now you're adding a bit of a chunk onto it. But before I enter even explaining the project, because Laurens came off stage, but it's very important, and for those who were there this morning, you saw the ecosystem around BC, and before I start, I want to thank you. I want to thank some people in the crowd here, which are the team that actually made this building possible, of course, within the team of BC, because I'm representing and I'm standing here, but of course it's their effort and the team effort, and it's Johan, it's Jérôme, it's Iris who came down to visit us today, and it's Grégoire who wasn't able to be here today, but it's an incredible effort and an incredible, beautiful project as well that they made happen, and is coming today to its end. And next to that, and I think I'm talking for all architects who are here, one thing is the architect that does his thing and has his ambition, but no architectural projects come to be without clients, without people giving the platform to us to proceed and go further with our ambitions. And I think in that, LUMA and most specifically Maya, of course, thank you so much, because I think it is impossible for architects to make and have impact in the world if you don't have the people, of course, who are giving you, or who are giving society a kind of platform to experiment, to prototype, and make real change in our kind of construction culture. And so therefore, a big thank you to these people. Adaptive reuse, Gregory, when I saw you talking about adaptive, I don't know if you saw my title or I just hit it perfectly. But so I'll enter a bit this story of the renovation, which took on a kind of approach of adaptive reuse in this case, of the former Clinique of Jean-Paoli, which we really have to put as a next milestone after the building that we finished in 2023, which is Lot 8. Because really this project follows and continues the narrative that was started to be written here in this building. Lot 8 served as a prototype. Lot 8 served as a kind of investment and experiments in using locally sourced resources, trying to understand which potential resupply chains would work, which wouldn't. And we, at the end, with the amazing work together with Assemble and Atelier LUMA, we were able to make this building, which works as an inspiration, which works as an example, but of course is not replicable in its completeness. There are certain things that work as inspiration, but are impossible in the kind of economic market that we have, or the kind of market conformity are not kind of matching. And Paoli gave us the opportunity to try and see which kind of elements of this ecosystem that was created around Lot 8 were able to we were able to pursue in a kind of different setting, in a kind of also different ambition, different goal, different program, and one which had to fit much more within market conformity. And therefore, it's impossible, or at least the narrative that I'm bringing you is, of course, that it's impossible to split these two things. One couldn't be without the other. And they're also not so far away from each other. Because as you can see where we're standing, where we are at lot 8, Paoli is situated just across the Canal du Craponne, just next to Les Aliscans, in a quite residential area. And this is it before we did the renovation, just for you to know. But this was a clinic built in the 50s, which stopped to be a clinic well known for many people I met, and from Arles, and I say Clinique Jean-Paoli, as, yeah, of course, my grandfather was there. But stopped to work in 2020. And it is a building typical for its age, early 50s, completely kind of concrete structure. Quite atypical, though, the complete fillings of the interior walls were done in full concrete blocks. Usually you would encounter hollow blocks, but these are full concrete blocks. And the project of the renovation in creating a temporary housing for students and seasonal workers started in just after lot 8 already, in July 2022. And today we're May 2025, and we're coming to a kind of end. And today I'll organize a bit the presentation in a way like looking at certain topics or certain kind of battles we took on. Because of course, in the reality of the renovation of the clinique, one was, of course, we couldn't do everything again. We had to compromise, of course, and try to fit this in a different economical logic. What we can see here on this shot is, of course, clearly its implantation in a very residential area, so completely different from the setting we're here in the Magasin Électrique. And at the back, you can see the bigger greenery of Les Aliscans. There is a front building, the main building from the 50s at the back, which had the same footprint, but the drone shot was taken sadly after its demolition. But there was a surgery space that was having the same footprint, built in the 90s. To go slightly over program, just so you to understand a bit what is happening inside. So we talked about temporary housing for students and seasonal workers. I mean, I'm just gonna take one, at least I can see. And the ground floor and the footprint and the organization of the existing clinic was actually perfectly to be used and transformed into housing. It followed a kind of rigid system. We had patients, now we have inhabitants, changes a bit, but at the end we're all patients of the earth. But at the front building, we slightly changed just access points, meaning you had originally a central axis, we turned it to the sides. We have left the logistical axis and right a kind of axis more for the visitors or the inhabitants. And the front side was kept as a kind of green buffer zone because, you know, students coming all together, we didn't want to disturb too much the residential area. So this became a much more of a kind of secondary garden place. And in the front building, we had the night program, let's say, the rooms. And at the back building, we focused, so the old surgery rooms, we focused really on the day activities, meaning the refectory, the common areas. And they were organized around this kind of square type situation or arrival zone. As I mentioned, this pavilion at the back, this old surgery, we wanted to keep it. So in the initial plans before starting the I think in French you say curation. I don't know if it exists in English, curation, but I like the idea. So we curated the kind of demolition because we didn't demolish everything. We really decided what to demolish. We didn't want to demolish the surgery, but in the 90s we were great with glue. We loved glue, so everything was glued to everything. So basically in the kind of demolition process, we detached all structural elements, and it was impossible for us to kind of keep the original structure of it. We decided, though, to keep the footprint, so the current refectory and common areas in that backside pavilion, let's call it like that, they kept the existing footprint. And of course, above we started, and we could imagine keeping the same kind of structure, and the building was perfectly kind of adaptable to its new function. This is a little sketch expressing a bit the kind of first kind of guidelines, and I think I'm gonna check if I start. Yes, I start correctly. We start with the front building. So there were a few kind of decisions that were made, and one of a kind of very important wish and ambition that we had was to insulate the complete building with rice straw. Rice straw bales, which were firstly used here at the interior, but of course you can imagine using them in a similar way here and insulating the interiors. The rooms would be basically unusable because we're talking about 35 centimeters of thickness. So in this building, and definitely at this scale, it was not really yet done to insulate in rice straw bales from the complete outside. And working with a supply chain that, after the construction of the Lot 8, started to become and have economical reasons also to be there, because the agriculture around or in the Camargue, of course, with rice, could also attach itself to a new kind of economic reality of selling these kind of materials that they harvest also within the construction sector. So it made sense. And it was one of the things that we really, with this project, we wanted to show. It makes sense. So the complete building, and I think this was not able to be done with the people of Nebraska, by Pete, who were together with us in kind of developing the correct details and being there on site to really execute it. Because again, as we need clients, we need, as architects, we need contractors. We can have ambitions, but if there's nobody who can translate them also on a construction site, little advance happens. And so an amazing team which was able to kind of wrap the whole kind of clinic in this kind of material. On top of that material, of course, the straw bales are not visible to everything, and we had in this morning many presentations in which the potential of straw bale and rice straw bale was brought up. It's not efficient finishing with plaster, rather with a hot mix technique. Before entering the hot mix technique, the roof itself is, of course, the tile. It was insulated, the tiles were taken down, cleaned, reused for the ones that were able to be reused. I would love to tell you we took the tiles down, we crushed them and used them straight away, but it's not possible, and it's a hard one to make work within the French legislation. But it is crushed bricks and tiles which were used, just not the ours, but just of others. Doing that on site would create so much dust that you would have issues. Once material goes out of a construction site, it's understood as waste, and it enters other normations. So weirdly, I think stuff still should change around that. But in any case, the crushed bricks and crushed tiles, they were part of a lime hot mix, which came on top of the full rice straw bale insulation. Hot mix technique, and I think Rashid is more of an expert than myself as a craftsman, but what it means is that the lime, quick lime in this case, quick lime is the lime which is not going through the full process up until becoming hydrated lime or cement, but is taken out of the chain at the first step, which means it underwent less processing, less heating, but it's unstable. So what it means is it's a technique used in renovations of historical buildings quite a lot, but at lower amounts. In this case, it was used to plaster the full building, and it's a technique which means there's a process to do on the site, a process which the air you can see, or the dust you can see there, is actually not dust, it's actually heat production, because it's a chemical reaction this kind of quicklime has with the addition of water. I will not bore you with details. We've seen a lot of details, so I will not enter in that too much. But I think what is impressive to see is the transformation such a building can have. A transformation which recalls, though, its existing function before maybe, but it is a kind of reimagining of the facade and something much more soothing, its kind of new use. What we're seeing here, and I think it's quite beautiful, is the kind of texture that this kind of hot mix creates, because also the eye wants something. It's not all about data. I think we have to be careful that we don't enter a data deterministic kind of architecture, but there's also a human aspect into all of this. And I think the kind of what you see in the plaster and what some of you, whenever you go and visit, you'll see is the kind of human touch on it. It's not perfect. There are flaws in a kind of not a perfected flat surface, but rather one that is cared for. And now it doesn't work. Yes, it works. And then if we look at the full building, this is the building in a stage which was it was plastered already. There's the south facade, which is exposed to quite a lot of sun. And there has to be an addition. Another situation at this south facade was that the balconies were very poor, or I would say they were today not passing anymore the certification of strength, let's put it like that. And so the addition that we thought we should make is not only one protecting it from the sun, but also one that would make sure we could keep the balconies. We thought it would not make sense to really demolish and then put new balconies, because we thought these work. And so we kind of went through kind of different systems in order to kind of strengthen actually the existing balconies with a kind of exoskeleton, but at the same time something that would allow protection from the sun and still allowing ventilation under it. Oh, went too fast. And that is something, it's a detail, I'm not showing the full building, that you have to go and look for yourself. But in any case, these are kind of elements, an exoskeleton, which beautifully also kind of creates a kind of interesting dynamic at the front side. It leaves the existing building to be shown, although there's a kind of added element that creates shadow and gets some more life into it. And then in a very DIY way, there's a kind of shading mechanism. We're not too fond of too many technical things. And I'm not gonna enter, maybe yes, this one yes, because when we talk about supply chains, we talk about a variety of products. Rice straw bale insulation exists today in the tools for it exist today with the farmers. They make blocks, they're 35 by and so on, and they've got this, and that's what they can put on sale. But the more projects that try to use this material, of course, the more the supply chain will adapt to the kind of request. 35 centimeters, very hard to insulate your little apartment in Paris with, because you go from 20 square meters to 10. So I think there's a kind of interest and development, what you can see with entrepreneurs, I would say, in the development of new tools to allow also the use of, in this case, it's not rice straw, but it's straw, of making insulation elements which are not 35, which are smaller, because to do that, you need new machines, which we don't have yet. We've developed very fast cars, but not machines who can press straw in smaller elements than 35. But here we have some developments happening in France, in the north of France, a industry which is they have a big sewing machine, and it's creating these big tatamis, basically, which can be used to insulate, and we did that at the south facade when smaller margins, or at least a smaller thickness, which allowed balcony, of course, still to be used. I mean, small details, but when you enter the reality of a project, these become actually the milestones of a decision you can make. Is there a tool? Is there a machine? Yes or no? It's not, well. So it's very important to make more and more referential projects like these. Now, from the front building, we enter the back building being the pavilion. I think one of my colleagues mentioned the fact that we had an overproduction of the blocks here in lot 8, so it was quite logical to reuse these blocks. And the line we can see there, actually, just to explain slightly before the programs, there's a kind of core within the pavilion, which is completely geo-based. So we're talking earth blocks and we're talking stone blocks. Within that block, we have all kind of technical aspects, from the buanderie to the kitchen and all these kind of more technical spaces. Outside, it's a larger space. We used fonds-vieilles and blocks. I think it made quite beautiful walls, but this is just this is just a reality of the context, which we are in a flooding area. So the first 1 meter, well, earth has, of course, not the best property when you just put it in water. So therefore, stone was used. And a bigger work was taken in the research of local trees that could potentially, or could become the structure around the core. And we have chestnut for all the windows. We have oak for the structural beams within the building. We have, Iris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 6 columns of cypress outside. Right? And we have pin d'Alep, Aleppo tree, and pin maritime for the inside. So each kind of specific tree type had its use within the building, because not each tree type, of course, can be used for the same reasons. Quite a work in convincing certain forestries or looking for these things, because it's, again, this is not something you go to the market and you say, well, this is the kind of set of trees I need. So today, again, there's not a real supply chain focusing on these kind of tree types for construction. So there's, again, slightly a bit more investment of time and energy that has to go to linking up these people just to make sure you get the material inside. This is a small detail. Voulez-vous ajouter du texte? Non. And this is a bit how these two structures then come together, the kind of existing building and the pavilion, which you all will see very soon. Last but not least, I'm almost done. And we were talking about reusing, of course, the whole structure of the clinic as much as possible. We talked about the walls, and sadly enough, also the walls within the front building were hard to reuse, also because they were, over time, a lot of finishings were added, and all these finishings, again, were like glued, and by taking them off, parts of the walls, internal walls, broke down, so we had also to take these down. As we took them down, Rashid and Tanzi explained nicely this morning, we created, as we had to make new walls, and we wished to kind of finish them all with earth plaster to have more inertia within the building. We set out a kind of color scheme in order to also place certain type of colors in certain type of spaces, which were more prone to sun, others not. Therefore, the higher you went, the darker the earth plaster. And this is the second floor. We have more greenish rooms. All the hallways were much more lighter because you had less light in. And here actually you see the pin d'Alep, which is actually a beautiful texturized wood that is not often used. We should receive more attention to it. And when we enter the curation and the demolition, of course, there's a set of materials that we could and we wanted to recuperate. Some of them we managed, some others not. And what is just beautiful walking throughout this building is, of course, that you recognize certain elements which their story was transformed and adapted to its new function. Certain examples are the tiles outside, which were used for some paving. When polished, they became beautiful again and actually were used in the interior. We have all the lowered ceilings, metal lowered ceilings, which were used for closets, but also doors, as you can see here in the sanitary. But also in furniture, because certain doors, certain elements, they were very useful to kind of habitate or inhabit the space. Combined with certain kind of elements. Well, I took them yesterday morning, they just arrived. I think a great work was done by Johanna and Grégoire of our team, who really tried to look and understand what was possible to be made with these leftovers. And even small stories, I think it's always nice and also fun to have these ones. These are the old lights, which became a family of objects in the rooms, reusing also just excavated earth. But also while doing the construction site, you're actually producing additional waste. These are offcuts and so on and so forth. And from those, a selection of also other furniture came to be. But also even actually when we order materials, contractors always add a 10%, you never know. So we had a small percent of these blocks, which were then reused for furniture. And so you have a family of one-shots that inhabit the spaces of Paoli. And that's it. I invite you to go and visit it one day or stay over. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Laurens, for this amazing presentation. It seems really easy for you to pull out such a project, whereas we know how much work and effort you put into it. So again, thank you to present us with ways with which architecture can try to face some of the challenges that we're going to get. It's done in a way that is extremely beautiful, and that's really a joy to see. So